Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Raina Bennett stood in her kitchen, stirring a simmering pot of stew when her phone, sitting on the counter, blared her mother's laughter through the speaker. She hadn't meant to turn the volume up, but a wet hand had brushed the screen without thinking. Her husband, Miles, had just walked in from the cold, shrugging off his coat and stamping his boots, when the sentence came sharp and clear, a blade dressed as a casual remark. "Don't stress about her," her mother, Lucinda, announced between giggles. "We only invited the ones who really matter. You know, the real family." Raina froze as if her heartbeat had stopped mid-beat, spoon hovering over the pot. Miles paused too, one glove still halfway off his hand, staring at his wife like he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. Raina didn't speak, and neither did Miles. Silence spoke loud enough. Over the phone, Lucinda continued laughing with someone. Raina recognized her younger sister's voice chiming in. "Right," said Marina. "It's not like she likes these events anyway." Raina reached slowly for the screen and ended the call, her fingers trembling slightly. She whispered, "Wow." Miles placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and steady. "They didn't think you'd hear that," he muttered. Raina swallowed and forced a small, brittle laugh. "Oh, I was meant to hear it." Miles asked softly, "Are you okay?" And Raina nodded, even though her eyes were shining too bright. "Of course. I'm 35 years old, married, own a business, pay my bills," she said, forcing a shrug. "Apparently I'm still optional." The stew bubbled behind her, filling the room with the scent of thyme and garlic, but all she could taste was rejection. She pushed the spoon aside and leaned against the counter, deciding, not yet knowing what, but knowing a decision had started forming like a spark in dry grass. The New Year's gala had been planned for weeks, maybe months, judging from the messages that had lit up the Bennett family group chat every morning. Raina had watched the thread scroll by with pictures of sequin dresses, playlist suggestions, catering debates, hundreds of messages that went on without her name in them. "It's practically a wedding," Miles joked once, scrolling past pages of back and forth. Raina only smiled, even though she already sensed something shifting. Her siblings, Marina and her older brother, Jonah, had been buzzing about the theme, midnight royalty, and who was wearing what. But Raina had never received an invitation. Not a call, not a text, not even an accidental mention. When Miles finally pointed it out and called her father to ask why they never sent Raina her invite, her father, Harold, sighed like he was tired of the subject before he even spoke. "We didn't think it mattered," he said, voice flat. "Things have changed with Raina." Miles frowned, confused. "Don't you think she deserves to decide that herself?" Harold sighed harder. "Look, son, she doesn't fit the vibe anymore. She always questions things. She makes everything heavier than it needs to be." Miles clenched his jaw and asked, "So you cut her out?" Harold replied, "We didn't cut her out. We just assumed she wouldn't come." When Miles told Raina what her father said, she let out a breath that felt too practiced. "I'm used to it," she said lightly. "At least now they're honest." That night she pretended nothing stung, told Miles he could go if he wanted, and spent 20 minutes convincing herself she truly didn't care. But as midnight approached, the quiet in their apartment pressed down on her chest like weight. She stared through the window at the city lights and whispered, "They really meant it this time." She didn't cry, but her heart bruised anyway. By 9 o'clock that night, Raina had already made her choice, not with fanfare, not with fury, but with a softness that hid steel underneath. She slipped into a deep green wrap dress she hadn't worn in years, the one she'd once planned to wear to her cousin's engagement party before her invitation got lost in the shuffle. She curled her hair loosely and looked herself in the mirror, seeing someone she barely recognized. someone who had spent decades twisting herself into smaller and quieter shapes. When Miles asked, "Where are you going?" she smiled with real mischief in her eyes for the first time in months. "Somewhere different," she said. "Somewhere I'm welcome." He grinned, kissed the side of her head, and said, "Lead the way." By 9:30, they were in an Uber heading to a rooftop bar they'd always said they'd try one day, yet never had. The city looked glittering, loud, alive, not like the Cathedral of Judgment her childhood home always felt like. The hostess greeted them with warmth, ushering them into velvet seating like they belonged there, because of course they did. Drinks shimmered, strangers laughed, and no one asked Raina why she was there. At 10 o'clock, she found herself dancing beside Miles. Cheeks flushed, the skyline winking behind them as if the whole city whispered. Finally, she didn't think once about her family's party until she checked her phone and realized she hadn't heard from them, which was confirmation enough of her invisibility. But her own laughter grew, louder than every hurt she had carried. Miles spun her under his arm and whispered, "You seem free." And for the first time in years, she believed him. At 11:58, Raina lifted a glass of champagne and breathed in the chilly rooftop air, tasting winter and possibility. Strangers counted down with loud voices, and the city hummed with electricity. Miles nudged her gently. "Ready for a new year?" he asked. Raina nodded, but her answer held more layers than he could hear. "Ready to stop begging for doors that don't open." Midnight erupted in fireworks that streaked across the sky like streaks of forgiveness she no longer needed. When the clock hit 12:01, Raina pulled out her phone and took a photo, her hand intertwined with Miles, both glasses lifted toward a glittering skyline, and posted it with 3 words, "Perfect where I am." Then she tucked her phone away and forgot about it, not realizing the tremors she had set off across town. At the Bennett mansion, her picture flashed on screens of siblings and cousins as they scrolled social feeds between sips of wine. Her mother's glossy smile faltered mid-conversation. Marina's face sharpened with irritation. Jonah muttered she didn't even try. Raina's father cleared his throat and said, louder than necessary, "Well, she made her choice." But everyone saw something else. She was enjoying herself without them, and enjoyment for some families felt like betrayal. Raina, still swaying gently with Miles to soft music, didn't feel the sting of that truth anymore. She whispered, "I thought I'd be sad tonight." Miles wrapped an arm around her waist. "You're not missing anything," he said confidently. Raina smiled and replied, "No, I'm finally not missing myself." When the music swelled, she realized something simple and powerful. She didn't need an invitation to belong to her own life. Her phone began vibrating at 12:30 a.m. like a shaken beehive. Messages from cousins she hadn't heard from in months, filled with confusion, surprise, thinly veiled worry, and performative affection. "Why aren't you here? Are you sick? Did you forget? Marina is freaking out. Mom's pacing." Raina laughed softly, slipped the phone into her clutch, and returned her attention to the city below. But one message caught her eye from a number she knew by heart, her sister Marina. "What exactly are you trying to prove?" Raina stared the screen, feeling her pulse slow instead of spike. She typed back slowly, "Nothing." Then she deleted it. Silence felt cleaner. She let her phone go dark and leaned against the railing beside Miles. He kissed her temple and said, "Whatever they think this is, it isn't your burden anymore." Raina nodded, murmuring, "They don't miss me. They miss control." Somewhere across town champagne was souring, conversation thinning, a hole widening in a family portrait carefully arranged to exclude her, and her absence was finally impossible to hide. But Raina no longer felt invisible. She felt seen, by strangers, by her husband, and most importantly by herself. As the fireworks faded and city lights blinked steady, she made a quiet promise she didn't voice out loud. "You won't shrink me again." Her new year didn't arrive with a bang. It arrived with a steady inhale and a decision that would change more than she knew. The next morning's sunlight filtered through the blinds, slipping across Raina's face like a gentle reminder that time always moved forward, with or without her family's approval. Her phone was still buzzing when she finally reached for it around 9 a.m. Missed calls, unread messages, and voice notes stacked like a monument to panic. Most were from cousins. "You missed something crazy last night. Aunt Gloria is losing her mind. Your mom won't stop mentioning you." Raina smiled faintly, picturing Lucinda trying to explain why her eldest daughter, the one she proclaimed not real family, suddenly mattered more in absence than she did in presence. At noon the phone finally rang with a name she could never bring herself to ignore: Marina. The moment she answered, her sister launched into a scripted tirade, her voice sharp enough to cut fruit. "Do you realize what you did?" Marina demanded. Raina stayed quiet and let her keep going. "Mom said people were whispering, asking where you were, asking why you didn't look happy in the group chat photos." Marina's breath hitched with emotion and convenience masquerading as concern. Raina asked softly, "And why do you think people asked?" Marina hesitated, then said, "Because it made us look bad." Raina sat down slowly, letting those words sit in the air like something sour. "So that's it," she whispered. "Not that you missed me. Not that you wondered if I was okay. You missed the picture of a perfect family you get to post." Marina sighed. "You're twisting this." Raina shook her head, even though her sister couldn't see it. "No, I'm finally seeing it straight." And when Marina tried to shift into guilt mode, "They're your parents, Raina. You owe them something." Raina replied gently, "I did. For years. I'm paid up." Then she hung up, feeling surprisingly calm. 2 days later came a blow not meant for her eyes, but delivered straight into her feed through a scroll she almost regretted making. Her mother, Lucinda, queen of carefully curated appearances, posted a masterfully filtered slideshow of the New Year's gala. Sparkling lights, champagne towers, perfect smiles captured at angles that did not reveal the tension simmering underneath. But it was the caption that turned Raina's stomach cold. What a blessing to spend the night with those who truly belong. The part that twisted the knife came in the comments, where relatives piled on like eager spectators. Hearts, applause emojis, glowing affirmations, until Aunt Gloria, never one to miss an opportunity, added a line that made Raina inhale sharply. "Family is everything if people remember their place." And there, tagged lightly, almost by accident, but absolutely intentional, was Raina. Her phone vibrated seconds later with Marina's frantic message. "Ignore it. Mom's emotional." The absurdity of that request almost made Raina laugh out loud. Emotional? No, calculated. Lucinda Bennett was not careless. She controlled every word that left her fingertips. And what she wrote, what Gloria echoed, was not a slip. It was a declaration. Raina stared at her reflection in her phone's black screen and said softly to herself, "They didn't exclude me because I was difficult. They excluded me because I stopped shrinking." Then, for the first time, she did something unfamiliar. She didn't defend herself, confront them, or spiral. Instead, she opened a blank note and typed, "Stop asking to be chosen by people who benefit from excluding you." It sat there like a seed, waiting to bloom. In the days that followed, Raina let the pain run its course. Not ignored, not suppressed, but witnessed like an old wound finally allowed to breathe. She drank tea with slow sips, went on long walks with Miles, and talked to no one she didn't genuinely want in her orbit. She thought about every dinner where she was talked over, every birthday where her name was an afterthought, every favor she fulfilled in silence, because that's what good daughters do. Memories that once burned now simply explained things. And then came clarity, simple, sharp. Her family hadn't kept her on the periphery because she was unlovable. They had done it because she no longer molded herself to fit their expectations, responsibilities, or unspoken rules. She had opinions, boundaries, a life beyond their table. And adults who rely on control often mistake autonomy for rebellion. One morning, She opened her laptop and reviewed the long, invisible list of things she handled for her parents: tax reminders, health insurance claims, organizing rentals for family reunions, tracking overdue utility bills at her childhood home. Things Lucinda and Harold assumed she would manage because she always had. That assumption, she realized, was her real invitation, not to parties or dinners, but to unpaid, uncredited service. "No more," she whispered. It started like a quiet, administrative breeze. One email here, one removed authorization there. Nothing dramatic, nothing vengeful, just unthreading herself one string at a time. Miles watched her one evening and asked, "Are you doing this to hurt them?" Raina shook her head with a thoughtful smile. "I'm doing it, so I stop hurting." It wasn't rebellion. It was freedom. Things unraveled more quickly than Raina expected, not on her end, but theirs. At first came confusion. Her mother couldn't log in to the shared documents Raina once managed, her father couldn't renew a rental agreement, and the cousin who relied on her connections for a job interview found her introduction email mysteriously gone. Then came panic. Lucinda called once, twice, 10 times. Harold emailed increasingly terse requests. Marina sent a voice note that started polite and ended with a frustrated hiss. "Can you just fix this like you always do?" Raina ignored every one of them. It wasn't avoidance. It was alignment. Only when the doorbell rang, late one evening, did she look up from the book she was reading. Miles opened the door to reveal Harold Bennett. Not angry, not triumphant, lost. "We just need a bit of help," he muttered, eyes scanning the living room like he couldn't quite believe he was asking. Raina stepped forward slowly. Harold swallowed hard. "Things are messy," he admitted, like the sentence cost him pride he had never imagined parting with. "And your mother, well..." She wasn't thinking when Raina cut him off softly. "She was thinking," she said, "just not about me." Harold rubbed his forehead. "Look, can't we just put this behind us? You're still family." Raina smiled, calm and steady. "You taught me family means showing up," she said. "That's what I did for years. And you taught me something else, too. Value is only seen when it's withdrawn." Harold's posture sagged. "So you won't help?" Raina shook her head gently. "Not this time." He nodded once, resigned, and walked away, and for the first time in her life, Raina didn't feel like the child left behind. She felt like the adult walking forward. The fallout settled, not with fury, but with silence, the kind that holds truth inside it. Dinner that Sunday at the Bennetts was awkward, according to a cousin who texted Miles privately. No one touched the roast. No one toasted. Lucinda kept glancing at the empty seat where Raina used to sit unnoticed, now conspicuous in its vacancy. 2 weeks later, a thick cream envelope arrived at Raina's doorstep, her name printed dead center in looping gold letters, an invitation to a family reset dinner. No call, no apology, just a gesture shaped like repentance but hollowed by convenience. Miles opened it and raised a brow. "They want you back," he said. Raina smiled faintly. "No," she corrected gently. "They want what I used to give." She didn't attend. Instead, she and Miles cooked at home, barefoot, music playing, onions caramelizing in butter. She snapped a photo of Miles spinning her around the kitchen, laughter spilling between them, and posted it with a caption that needed no anger. New traditions fit better. Hours later, Lucinda sent a message, stripped of pride, stripped of performance. "I didn't realize how much we leaned on you." Raina read it carefully, then typed her response slowly. That was the problem. She didn't block them, didn't rage, didn't shrink. She simply stepped back and let the distance stay measured by respect rather than obligation. And as the year unfolded, Raina found quiet joy in building a life where she belonged by default, not by permission slip. The real victory wasn't their regret. It was her freedom. She no longer needed to be chosen. She had already chosen herself. About a week after the family reset dinner she did not attend, Raina found herself walking through the city with a lightness she couldn't name at first. She stopped in a coffee shop she'd always admired but never entered. Too busy before, too entangled in obligations that weren't hers. She ordered a caramel latte and sat by the window, watching strangers rush through their own lives. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting for her phone to vibrate with someone else's demand. Miles texted her a photo of their cat wearing his scarf, and she burst out laughing loud enough that the barista smiled her way. Later, her cousin Ava reached out, the one who had always stayed quiet in family drama. Ava asked if they could talk. Curious, Raina agreed. They met that evening in a cozy diner with red leather booths and a jukebox humming softly. Ava leaned forward immediately, no small talk. "I just wanted to say, I saw what happened," she whispered. "And I'm proud of you." Raina blinked, surprised. Ava continued. "They always relied on you to be the glue, the fixer, the quiet one. And the truth is they didn't deserve you." Raina tried to shrug it off, but Ava held her gaze. "You know what Mom said after you didn't show up?" She said, "Maybe we taught her she didn't matter." The sentence hit like a weight and a release at the same time. Raina exhaled. "I don't hate them," she said softly. "I'm just done bleeding for free." Ava nodded. "You don't have to hate them to walk away." They talked until the diner closed, and when Raina stepped outside into cool air, she felt steadier in her truth. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like someone standing on the edge of her family. She felt like someone standing firmly in her own story. Life began to fill the spaces where pain used to sit. Raina started volunteering at a local literacy program on Tuesday nights, something she'd always wanted but never prioritized. Children tugged at her sleeve, eager to show her the words they were learning. "You're good at this," the program coordinator told her one evening. "Kids relax around you." Raina laughed in surprise. "I guess I finally have room to breathe," she replied. Meanwhile, Miles watched her transformation with quiet pride. One night, he took her hand and said, "I always knew you were powerful. I'm just glad you know it now." Raina leaned into his shoulder, grateful to be seen without conditions. Messages from her family slowed. When they did come, they were softer, like someone trying to negotiate with a locked door. Marina sent a text saying she wanted to check in. Harold asked about taxes, almost like he forgot he no longer had that automatic access. Lucinda stayed silent, which was louder than any speech she could have given. Raina responded only when she felt like it. No guilt, no urgency, only agency. She realized her life had been small not because she lacked capacity, but because she had shrunk herself to fit inside someone else's expectations. Now that she had stepped outside the lines they drew, the world looked wide, possible, ready. One Sunday morning while watering her plants, Raina thought back to the girl she once was, the one who waited by the phone for approval disguised as invitation. She whispered to the empty room, "You're free now." And somewhere deep inside, that girl finally believed her. Spring arrived quietly, with the smell of rain on sidewalks and small blossoms appearing on trees that had looked dead all winter. Raina stood on her balcony watching sunlight spill over the city, feeling a kind of peace she hadn't known existed outside stories or movies. Her family was still out there, unchanged, still tangled in traditions and hierarchies and image management, but their shadow no longer reached her doorstep. One afternoon, she received a plain envelope, no gold lettering this time, no flourishes. It was from Lucinda, written in careful handwriting that belonged to an earlier version of their relationship. Inside was a single apology, not perfect, not poetic, but human. "I didn't realize how much our world was built on you. I see it now. I hope someday you let us earn your place back." Raina reread it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer. She didn't need to respond. Forgiveness, she had learned, did not require return trips. That night, she and Miles hosted a small gathering. Just a few friends, music playing low, laughter filling their apartment like warm light. Someone toasted her quietly, saying, "New beginnings deserve witnesses," and everyone raised their glasses. Raina did too, smiling as bubbles tickled her lip. She realized the real victory was not her family missing her or regretting what they did. It was that she had built a life that felt like home without their approval. When she set her glass down, she whispered the sentence that had guided her from that first night. I don't need their invitation. My life is my own party. And with that simple truth, the story of being erased ended, replaced by a story she wrote herself. One choice, one boundary, one breath of freedom at a time. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this.